Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Valeria and I've lived in Italy for the past 10 years after moving here for the university, and for 9 years I lived in Bologna, and then last October I moved to Florence. And actually today, when I'm filming this video, marks 5 months exactly since I moved here, and I feel like now I finally can make a video comparing the two cities and life in these two cities, and just talk about the differences. Also, if you're new here, I make lots and lots of travel vlogs, but also sometimes I chat about expat life here. And subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet. Also like and comment this video, and if you want to support my channel, you can hit the thanks button down below. And thank you so much to everyone who's already donated. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the video and let's talk about the differences between these two cities. So I want to start with a less obvious thing, and it might seem minor, but for me, as for someone who works remotely, it's huge. I love that in Florence there are more places to work outside from home if you're a remote worker compared to Florence. If you're a remote worker, guys, you might know that it's all fun until you're stuck at home and it just gets so repetitive and you want to get out. And I always try to balance out the days when I work from home with the days when I work from elsewhere. And in Florence, there are just more places to do so. Not only the coffee shops that are super cute and are adapted to people working remotely, but also the co-working places. There are more of those compared to Bologna, and the free places like Odeon or the Oblate Library, for example. I just love it, it's easier in Florence, and there are also more people working remotely here. In Bologna, there is Sala Borsa, which is an amazing public library, and it was good to get the work done from there when I lived in Bologna. However, there are just less places if you want some variety. The coffee shops are less adapted to people working from there. There are no plugs, there is often no Wi-Fi, and people just look at you weirdly when you do so. And yeah, as I said, there are just less people doing so. It's less common to be, a place where remote workers live. And yeah, this point goes to Florence, in my opinion. I also just love the Florentine coffee shop scene in general a little bit more. And also I like that there are more places where you can get brunch or less traditional food options, which is of course not relevant for tourists. But when you live in Italy and you have easy access to great Italian food every day, sometimes you crave variety. On the other hand, Bologna is a street food heaven. Seriously, there are so many places and so many options if you love street food. And also you will not spend much because it just doesn't cost pretty much anything in Bologna. You can find high quality, great, tasty, and very affordable street food on every corner. In Florence, it's way more difficult to find good street food. There are some places, there are also some food markets, but there are just less of them, and eating out in general costs more in Florence. So this point 100% goes to Bologna. By the way, guys, if you're heading to either Florence or Bologna this year, make sure to check out my travel guides in the description box. I put together 2 comprehensive guides for each city. Each of them features more than 150 things to do and places to go, and different itineraries tailored to the peculiarities of each city, and the digital map that you can also use offline. So check them out for the best experience, as advised from someone who knows both cities inside and out. Back to the comparison, and next up is climate. It's way sunnier here and there are more warm days, and considering the fact that I spent the whole winter here, I can compare the winter both in Bologna and in Florence. Winter in Bologna is tough. Unexpected, I know, but Italian winter can actually be pretty hard to bear. In Bologna, it was almost always gray and gloomy, and it's drizzling all the time in winter, and I was struggling a lot with the weather and with the climate there. Here in Florence, of course, there are some gray days, obviously, and this winter, it's been different, but the gloomy days are balanced out with sunny days, and there are more sunny days, and the weather is warmer and it just gives me life. The next difference I want to talk about is actually quite complicated because each city has its pros and cons when I talk about the city in general. What I mean is that the city center of Florence is not exactly walking friendly because the sidewalks are very, very narrow and it might be difficult to walk around, especially when there are lots of people. And now that the tourist season is coming over, I can only imagine how hard it's gonna get. And also, with the cars driving by in close proximity, it might be a little less pleasurable, a little less enjoyable to walk around. While in Bologna, there are portici all around the city, and portici are these covered passages that are wide and, covered. So rainy days were a blessing because you didn't need an umbrella in the city center. It actually took me a couple of months to get used to take an umbrella with me on every rainy day, in Florence. However, the streets have been like this in Florence since medieval times, so it's not the fault of the current city administration. And the portage of Bologna, the same way, have been around since the medieval times, so it's not exactly an achievement of the current city government. But what is the responsibility of the current city governments is the cleanliness and the general upkeep of the cities. And in this case, I feel like Florence has been managed better than Bologna because Florence is cleaner than Bologna. Bologna, sadly, may get quite dirty in the city center, and what pains me the most is the amount of graffiti on every single wall in the city center of Bologna. Don't get me wrong, I love street art, but this is not street art, and it's just sad to see these ancient buildings covered in ugly graffiti and ugly writings. The facades in Florence, on the other hand, are kept in a much, much better state in addition to the general cleanliness of the city. Next up, let's talk about the prices. And starting with rent, I can just say that finding a good place to live in for a decent price is difficult anywhere in Italy if you're looking in a big city. Both Bologna and Florence are quite expensive when it comes to rent, and in both cities it is hard to find a good, decent apartment that will also not require you to have tons of documents supporting your proof of income and stuff like that. I will actually make another video soon about, finding an apartment in Italy and sharing my tips, my experience, so stay tuned. And once again, I remind you to subscribe. But in the meantime, guys, you can watch my horror story video, my older video from back when I was looking for an apartment in Florence. I will leave you a link up here. And yes, as I said, in this case, both cities have, their difficulties when it comes to rent and apartments in general. Speaking of the prices in general, I've heard that in Bologna, the bus ticket, for example, has recently increased in price crazily, costing now 230 per ride, which is a lot in Italy, and especially compared to the old price when I used to live in Bologna, it was 150. So I feel like this rise is not really justified. In Florence, the bus ticket still costs 170, so you do the math, guys. When talking about groceries in supermarkets, I've also noticed that some products are cheaper in Florence, and in general, I feel like I spend less on groceries in Florence, which is strange for me because I'm talking about the same Italian chain supermarkets, I'm not talking about budget supermarkets like Lidl or Aldi. By the way, there is no Aldi in Florence, for example, but I'm just talking about the Italian supermarkets. The most ridiculous thing is that it can be the very same chain, the very same supermarket in Bologna and in Florence, and some products, most of them, will cost less in Florence. Even sometimes the premium quality products like organic products might cost less than the regular counterpart in Bologna. I don't know why it's happening, but yeah, this is just my observation that many things are generally cheaper in Florence and in Tuscany. On the other hand, as I've said already, going out and eating out in Florence costs more, way more than in Bologna. This is a given, going to the restaurant, going to a coffee shop, even just, regular things like aperitivo cost more in Florence than they do in Bologna. And this is also the reason why I've heard that many students complain about Florence as opposed to Bologna. I'm not a student anymore. However, as someone who went to the university in Bologna, I can confirm that in Bologna there are plenty of affordable options for students to go out without spending much. There are all the aperitivo places and like street food, as I said, and just, the places where you can get a drink or even coffee costs less in most cases. So yeah, this is something to think about, if you're a student and if you're tight on a budget, maybe Bologna might be a better choice if you are thinking about moving to Italy. Consider that very often these places will not offer you the best quality, of course, as it happens, but Bologna is heavily student oriented and everything moves around the university, so obviously the local businesses adjust accordingly. On the other hand, Florence offers more sophisticated places. I have to give it to this city. I personally love them, but then again, you're gonna pay more for those. Which actually leads me to think and talk about the expat communities in both cities. Both cities are very, very international, but each in its own way. When talking about Bologna, of course, since it's a university city, there will be tons of international students. When I was a student, I loved the international vibe. There were tons of Erasmus students, exchange students, just international students like myself who did regular study there, and it was lovely. However, when I graduated and I didn't want to socialize with students anymore, obviously, I wanted to be around people in the same life stage as I was, I found it more difficult to find an expat community because it seems so, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me that Bologna is not exactly the place where expats go to settle down. Luckily, I have my Italian friends and I love them, but I miss the international vibe sometimes. And in Florence, on the contrary, I found lots of expats who plan to stay here for good. There are expats who made Florence their home, they work here full time, they own their businesses, they settle down here, plan to settle down here. We're all in the same life stage, we're all the same age, and I just find it absolutely incredible, very refreshing also to have so many expats from all around the world who share the same the same moment in life as myself and who still want to make Florence their home. So it obviously depends on your life stage and where you are at the moment, whether you're looking for more student-like party vibe, in which case Bologna is a great option, especially if you're planning to study there, or if you are someone older, young professional. But also, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of older expats as well, even the people who retired here. But yeah, from young professional onwards, I feel like Florence is a really, really good place if you want to have the international community. And I think that's it. I think we already have quite a long video, but yeah, I love noticing the differences between the two cities, and I'm pretty sure that I'll keep noticing them. It's not necessarily a good thing versus a bad thing, it's just about how different these cities are. And for me personally, I also love seeing and realizing how both cities proved to be amazing for me at different age. I just love it. I love both cities, to be honest. But yeah, I think it depends on your personality and where you are at the moment. Anyway, guys, I once again remind you to subscribe. I hope that this video helps you if you're indecisive and you're planning to move to Italy and choosing between various cities. I hope that I shed some light on both Florence and Bologna from my experience. So yes, subscribe, like this video. Also, let me know in the comments if you already live in Italy watching this video, or if you're curious about Italy or planning to move here. I'd love to know more. And follow me on Instagram for more life updates and just, daily things. I will leave you the handle here, guys. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and please enjoy the day.